A man who ignores you isn't showing strength. He's revealing his greatest weakness. Silence isn't power. It's the armor worn by someone afraid to be seen. Let that sink in for a moment, my friends, because we've been fed a lie over and over again, that when a man pulls away, it's because he's mysterious, in control, too busy chasing purpose to chase love, that his silence somehow means he's superior. But what if I told you, well, now, it's not confidence you're witnessing, it's avoidance. And what he's avoiding isn't you, it's himself. Before we go any deeper, if you've ever been ghosted, ignored, breadcrumbed, or left wondering what you did wrong, press that like button and hit subscribe right now. Not for me, for you. Because today, we're not chasing answers. We're reclaiming power. Now, hey ladies, imagine this. You're standing in front of a mirror, but this isn't your average mirror. It's one of those old, foggy, antique ones, the kind you find tucked away in your grandma's attic. Dusty, distorted, and every time you try to see yourself clearly, the glass just throws back a warped version of you. That's what a man's silence can become, a foggy reflection, one that convinces you you're the one who's unclear. But here's the truth, it's not your reflection that's broken, it's the mirror that's cracked. And when a man ignores you, your first instinct might be to analyze, overthink, shrink yourself down to fit into the silence he's created. But hear me, his distance isn't a message about your worth, it's a confession about his own emotional immaturity. Because let me tell you, real men don't run from intimacy, they rise to meet it. And if he disappears when you show up fully, that's not a loss, that's a filter doing its job. Carl Jung said, what we reject in others is often what we can't face in ourselves. And most men who ghost, ignore, or pull away aren't rejecting you. They're rejecting the part of you that sees too much. You didn't scare him because you were too much. You scared him because you saw through his mask. Now here's the kicker. Most women in that moment make the same mistake. They chase, they overperform, they try to earn their way back into relevance. But my friends, you were never meant to audition for love. You were born to choose it. The moment you stop asking, what's wrong with me, and start asking, what is this teaching me about him? The whole game changes. You see, a man who ignores you isn't in control. He's predictable. Because ignoring is easy. Confronting, communicating, showing up, that takes courage, that takes emotional presence. And not every man is built for that, especially not the ones who are still hiding from themselves. So what do you do when silence shows up at your door like a ghost from a bad novel? You don't go looking for closure, you become the closure. You don't become louder in his absence, you become deeper in your presence. And trust me, nothing shakes a man more than a woman who doesn't beg to be seen because she already sees herself. This isn't about revenge. This isn't about mind games. This is about remembering who the hell you are. Your attention is a gift, not a guarantee. Your presence is powerful. Your silence, when chosen, not forced, is magnetic. So if you're ready to stop being the woman who waits for a text and start being the woman who walks with purpose, stay with me, because what comes next might just shift everything you thought you knew about love, power, and what really happens when a man dares to ignore a woman who finally remembers her worth. Number one, the weakness of control. He believes you'll always be there. The moment he stops fearing your absence is the moment he starts ignoring your presence. Let that cut deep for a second, my friends, because that right there, that's not just a quote, that's a truth some of you have felt in your bones but didn't know how to name. And today, we're naming it. Control. That's what we're talking about. Not love, not distance, not mystery, control. You see, when a man believes you'll always be there, when he counts on your forgiveness before he's even apologized, he no longer values your presence. He expects it, assumes it, and when something becomes expected, it stops being respected. Now picture this, you're like the sun to him, always rising, always shining, always showing up, even on his cloudy days. At first he appreciates that light. It warms him, guides him, but after a while, he stops looking up, he stops noticing, he assumes the sun will rise whether he honors it or not. He forgets what the cold feels like until the day it doesn't rise. And suddenly what he once took for granted becomes the only thing he thinks about. That's you. You keep showing up thinking it proves your loyalty, but all it's doing is feeding his illusion that he doesn't have to do anything to keep you. And I know what's whispering in your head right now, but what if I leave and he doesn't notice? What if pulling back pushes him away for good? What if I end up alone? But let me tell you something that'll flip your whole mindset. You are not a punishment. You are a privilege. And if a man treats your presence like a background hum, like elevator music he hears but doesn't listen to, then stepping away isn't losing him, it's finding you. Carl Jung said, the psyche seeks predictability. And when a man feels certain you'll stay through anything, he stops investing, stops showing up, stops evolving. He becomes lazy with your heart because deep down he believes you won't leave. Not because he's so lovable, but because he's so sure you doubt your own worth. Let me be clear. He's not distant because you're unworthy. He's distant because he's gotten comfortable. And comfort breeds entitlement. Entitlement breeds indifference. And indifference, that's what you've been feeling in those unanswered texts, in that half-hearted energy, in that silence that feels louder than any fight ever could. So what do? You don't scream, you don't beg, you don't try harder. You become scarce, and not to manipulate, but to rebalance. Your presence must be earned, not in a cold, petty way, but in a grounded, self-respecting, soul-awakened way. You're not disappearing, you're recalibrating the scale, because the woman who always shows up, even when she's being taken for granted, eventually forgets what she looks like in her own mirror. And here's the magic no one tells you. When your presence is predictable, your absence is powerless. But when your absence becomes felt, your presence becomes sacred. So if he's been treating your loyalty like a vending machine, always available, no coins needed, remove the access. Not as a threat, but as a message. I am not here on autopilot. I am here by choice, and that choice can change. Let him feel the room without your warmth. Let him notice the silence where your energy used to dance. And because when a man finally realizes that you're not guaranteed, he either rises or he's revealed. And that, my friends, is where everything begins to shift. Stay with me, because where we're heading next, it's not about presence or absence. It's about reaction and the hidden power you give away every time you respond to silence like it's a challenge instead of what it really is. A mirror. Number 2, the weakness of certainty. He feeds off your reaction. You reacting is what feeds his illusion of power. Silence isn't just a mirror, it's your sword. Feel that one, my friends? Because the real game, it's not in what he does, it's in how you respond. Or more importantly, how you don't. See, when a man knows your emotions are tied to his actions, he doesn't need to commit. He doesn't even need to show up fully. All he has to do is trigger you. One breadcrumb, one delay, one unexplained pullback, and suddenly you're performing, overthinking, reaching, proving, and that right there is the trap. It's like this. Imagine your energy as a vault. Gold bars stacked inside, rare, valuable, protected. But if you hand out copies of the key every time someone knocks on the door with a little attention, or worse, a little neglect, what's left to treasure? What's left to earn? And your reaction is the key, and he knows it. So what happens when you stop handing it out? Carl Jung said, what we resist persists, but what we detach from, it transforms. When you resist his silence, you feed it, you fight it, you obsess over it. But when you detach, not from love, but from expectation, that silence turns from weapon to wisdom. You stop trying to decode him and start coming home to yourself. Now, I know what your heart might whisper, but if I don't say something, he'll forget me. But if I don't react, doesn't that mean I've lost? No, my friend, it means you've won, because you've stepped out of the ring. And the most disarming move a woman can make is not to fight for a place in his story, but to become the author of her own. You don't need to go louder, you just need to go quieter with power, because silence, chosen silence, that's not weakness, that's strategy, that's sovereignty. So next time he pulls back just to see if you'll chase, don't. Let the stillness echo and stay with me. Because where we're going next, it's not about his certainty. It's about the false superiority he clings to and how to dismantle it with nothing more than your presence. Number three, the weakness of superiority. He thinks he's irreplaceable. He thinks he's the center of your world, so stop orbiting. That one stings a little, doesn't it, my friends? Because somewhere along the way, you might have started shrinking your universe just to revolve around him, rearrange your days to fit his schedule, shrunk your smile when he grew distant, delayed your own dreams, waiting for his validation. And in that quiet sacrifice, he didn't become grateful. He became comfortable. See, men don't ignore what they're afraid to lose. They ignore what they believe they already own. And imagine this. You're a planet, brilliant, alive, spinning with passion, ideas, creativity, but you start orbiting around one star, his. Day after day, you revolve around his light, hoping he'll keep you warm. But you forget, you were made with your own fire. You were never meant to borrow your glow from anyone else. And let's be real, when someone thinks you can't exist without them, they stop showing up for you. That's not because you're not valuable, it's because they've mistaken your loyalty for dependency. Carl Jung said, what we pour energy into grows. So if you keep pouring your energy into someone who's offering breadcrumbs, guess what grows? His ego, his belief that no matter how little he gives, you'll still stay, still smile, still wait. But what if you stopped? What if your energy started flowing elsewhere to your passions, your peace, your people? What if he wasn't the headline of your day, but just a footnote? You're not being cold, you're being centered. Let him feel the stillness when you stop orbiting, and let him witness what happens when you return to your own gravity. And I know it's scary, but what if he doesn't come back? But what if I lose him for good? Let me tell you something bold. If stepping into your power drives him away, he was never built to stand beside it. You don't need to replace him. You need to reclaim you. Stop chasing the sun. You are the spark. And stay with me because next we're going to expose something even deeper, the lie that says he's needed, when in truth, he's only strong when you believe you can't thrive without him. Number four, the weakness of being needed. He thinks you can't thrive without him. Men fear powerful women, not because of their strength, but because it makes them question their own. Now that's a truth that lands heavy, my friends, because the moment a man senses you don't need him, not for happiness, not for validation, not for direction, something starts to crack, not in you, but in him. The illusion he's built of being your source, your guide, your emotional oxygen, it starts to crumble under the weight of your independence. Do you see, his ego isn't fueled by your affection, it's fueled by your dependence. By the idea that without his attention you'll fall apart, that your smile needs his approval, that your silence means longing, not peace. But here's the part they never say out loud. When a woman no longer needs a man, she becomes his mirror. And mirrors don't lie. Jung said the identity is built on reflections. A man sees himself through the way you respond to him. If you chase, he sees power. If you beg, he sees control. But if you pause, if you step back, if you choose yourself without needing permission, he sees the truth. He was only strong because you believed he was. It's like this. Imagine you're a lifeline. He's dangling off the edge, not in crisis, but in comfort. You've been holding him up with your time, your love, your worry, your energy. And suddenly you let go, not in hate, in healing, because you realize you were never supposed to carry someone who wouldn't climb. And I get it. But won't he think I don't care? But what if he replaces me? But what if I lose him? But hear me, independence isn't abandonment. It's alignment. It's not pushing him away. It's filtering who deserves a seat at your table. Because a man who's intimidated by your wholeness was only ever prepared to love your brokenness, and so cut off the lifeline. Not to hurt him, but to wake him up, to show him you don't need him. You choose him if he's wise enough to choose you back, and stay with me. Because next we're going to touch something even more fragile, the illusion he holds that your admiration is his birthright, and what happens when you take it back. Number five, the weakness of unchallenged ego. He confuses admiration with entitlement. Now, you made him feel like a king. Now he thinks the crown is his by birthright. And that one cuts deep, doesn't it, my friends? And because at first, your admiration was a gift, honest, pure, given with intention. You celebrated his ambition, his presence, his words, not because he demanded it, but because he earned it. But somewhere along the way, something shifted. He stopped showing up and still expected applause. He started doing less and somehow felt entitled to more. That's the danger of unchallenged ego. You didn't create a monster. You simply loved a man who forgot to keep rising. And when love becomes unearned, it becomes expected. He no longer sees your praise as something sacred. He sees it as something automatic. Let me put it this way. Imagine you've been writing poems on parchment, every line soaked in sincerity. You slide them under his door every morning, day after day, but over time he stops reading, he stops noticing. The poems pile up, unread, forgotten, not because they lost beauty, but because he stopped believing he had to deserve them. Now what happens when one day they stop coming? At first, silence, then confusion, then a slow growing ache. Carl Jung said, when a symbol loses its meaning, it loses its power. And that's what happens when you keep admiring someone who no longer reflects what you value. Your words lose weight, your energy loses edge, your love loses direction. So what do? You don't yell, you don't guilt trip, you don't turn cold. You simply reclaim the crown. Withdraw your admiration, not with hate, but with clarity. Let him feel the absence of the spotlight he stopped earning. Not to punish him, but to remind him you don't bow for ego, you rise for effort. And if he doesn't notice the difference between attention that's earned and attention that's assumed, then he was never wearing a crown. He was just holding a mirror, hoping you wouldn't see it. So my friends, here's your takeaway. If he doesn't reciprocate your value, don't reinforce his illusion. Let him do the work. Let him rediscover the privilege of your praise. And stay with me, because where we're heading next isn't about ego at all. It's about predictability and what happens when the woman he thought he knew no longer exists. Number 6, the weakness of predictability. He assumes you'll never change. He believes you'll always be who you were yesterday, so become who he never saw coming. Oof, that one lands, my friends, let it. Because when a man gets comfortable, too comfortable, he doesn't just relax, he stops respecting. He assumes you'll stay the same patterns, same responses, same softness on demand. He memorizes your rhythm, your emotional habits, the way you break silence just to keep peace, and he banks on that. But what happens when you change the music? What happens when the same woman he once predicted suddenly becomes unpredictable? Let me paint it like this. Imagine a dance. He leads, you follow, it's choreographed, rehearsed, expected, but then one day you switch the beat. You start moving in a rhythm he's never seen before. You don't flinch at his silence. You don't rush to fill the gap. You don't plead, explain, or overstay. You shift. And he stumbles. Carl Jung said, we test others to confirm our unconscious assumptions. And he's been testing you subtly, silently, pushing boundaries, pulling away, seeing if you'll always respond the same, because your predictability gave him power. It told him she's not going anywhere. But now you're rewriting the script quietly, powerfully, without theatrics. You're no longer the woman he left behind. You're the woman he no longer recognizes. And I know there's fear in that. What if he doesn't notice? What if I lose him in the change? But hear this loud and clear. The real loss was in staying the same for someone who never truly saw you. Change isn't a threat, it's a reveal. You're not becoming someone new, you're becoming you without the layers you wore to be loved. So change your rhythm, rebuild in silence. Don't post about it, don't announce it, just move different. Watch how the silence you once feared becomes the canvas for your next chapter. Because here's the truth, evolution is the ultimate revenge, not out of spite, but out of self-respect. And stay with me, because where we're headed next isn't about change, it's about validation. And what happens when the man who once basked in your praise suddenly feels the void where your admiration used to be? Number 7, the weakness of silent validation. He's addicted to your attention. He stopped showing up, but expected your attention to stay loyal. Most men don't realize how much they rely on your energy until it's gone. You don't need to scream your absence, just live in your presence. Jung, what we withdraw energy from loses power over us. Takeaway, stop being his source of significance. Watch the silence become his prison. Number 8, the weakness of reflection. He fears what you reveal. He isn't ignoring you because he's indifferent. He's ignoring you because you see too much. Let that one breathe, my friends, because sometimes what we call distance is really defense, and what feels like rejection is just a man running from his own reflection. See, it wasn't your love that scared him, it was your clarity. You didn't look at him with desperate eyes. You looked at him with eyes that understood, eyes that read beyond his charm, past the curated confidence, through the silence, and saw the boy behind the bravado, and that was too much. Not because you were wrong, but because you were right. Carl Jung said, "We project what we can't own." And when a man projects coldness, detachment, arrogance, it's often because deep down he knows there's something unfinished within him, a shadow he hasn't met, a truth he's not ready to name. You saw it, not because you were trying to fix him, but because your presence made it visible. It's like this. Imagine he's wearing armor, looks strong, unshakable, untouchable. Everyone sees the steel, but you noticed the dents, you saw the rust, you felt the weight of it all, and you didn't flinch. You didn't turn away. You stayed soft in the face of his hardness, and that scared him more than anything else, because now he had a choice: evolve or escape. And most men, when faced with someone who sees their truth before they're ready to see it themselves, they run. So let me say this loud and clear. You weren't too much. You were just too honest for a man not ready to face himself. And that's not your failure, that's his limit. You didn't break him, you just held up the mirror and he wasn't ready to look. He mistook your depth for pressure, mistook your perception for threat. But in truth, you were the safest thing he ever encountered. And he ran because the mask he wore couldn't survive in your presence. So here's your takeaway, my friend. Stop dimming your insight to keep fragile men comfortable. Stop softening your voice so they don't feel seen. You are not overwhelming, you are awakening. So now you know, my friends, his silence was never your fault. It was his fear. His weakness wasn't in losing you. It was in thinking he never could. And when you stop chasing, stop shrinking, and start remembering who you are, everything changes. Because the woman who sees herself clearly can't be ignored. If this opened your eyes, hit that like button, subscribe for more truth that empowers, and share this with a sister who needs the reminder. You're not hard to love, you're just done performing for it. Stay grounded, stay glowing, and I'll see you in the next one.